My name is Donna Schwartz and I'm 25. The first time I was told I wasn't good enough, I was 10, holding my report card like it might explode. One subject, one letter, math. A high C that really wanted to be a B. It almost leaned toward it. My dad looked at it like people look at water damage. First a sigh, then a bill. We expected more, he said, like I had broken a deal. Mom didn't say anything. She walked to the living room, unplugged my game console calmly, and put it in her closet. Click, door, lock, punishment. Until your grades improve, she said, like the judge, the jury, and the jailer. By dinner, the news had spread faster than a prayer chain. Auntie's whispers, church laughs. Poor Donna, so smart. If only she didn't play so many games. They never said it to my face. They saved it for plastic forks and potato salad. Shame has a way of keeping you at the kids' table, even when you're old enough to pass the salt. My younger brother, Lucas, was the golden child in our house. Perfect handwriting, perfect hair, perfect attendance. The day he got an A- in science, Mom emailed the teacher like there had been a mistake. Dad said, he's built different, like I was the broken version. I used to joke, if Lucas sneezed, we'd frame the tissue. If I sneezed, I was told to wash my hands and study. By middle school, I stopped bringing report cards home. Not because I was failing. I wasn't. I just learned that good kept moving. Straight B's? You can do better. 1A. Why not all? The game console never came back. I bought a used one with babysitting money, hid it under my bed, and played at 2 a.m. with tight headphones that left marks on my cheeks. It was the only place I felt like myself, quiet, focused, in control. One night, the door opened and Lucas looked in, wearing pajamas and perfect posture. Mom says you'll never get into college if you keep playing, he whispered. He was 9. Thanks for the update, I said, thumb hovering over pause. He wasn't wrong. I didn't get into a university, but not for the reason they believed. High school felt heavy. While everyone else prayed to the SAT gods, I found comfort in heat. I cooked because someone had to. Eggs, grilled cheese, ramen with ambition, pancakes on Saturdays. When Mom was at yoga and Dad was doing taxes, at first it was survival. Then it became my language. The first time my best friend's mom bit into my meatball sub, she closed her eyes and made a happy sound. You could sell these, she said, laughing, hand on her chest. It was the first time anyone said I was amazing at something that didn't need a test sheet. My parents called it a phase and taped a business program brochure to the fridge like a ransom note. Business, circled 3 times. I kept cooking. The kitchen made sense. Onions made me cry less than people did. When I chopped, everything lined up. When I whisked, things came together. Lucas collected trophies like magnets collect paperclips, choir solos, debate wins, honor cords. His schedule looked like a mayor's. Mine looked like a prep list. He didn't ask for the spotlight, but he never refused it. At the diner, they started me in the dish area. The line cooks were like pirates with clean stations and perfect timing. During slow hours, they let me experiment. Kids got hands, Chef Rico said once. It felt like a standing ovation. At home, Mom would pass by my roast chicken and mutter, if only you worked this hard at math. Onions make me cry less. I'd mutter back. She never laughed. By 17, the house had 2 moods toward me, disappointment and panic. When people asked, so what's Donna doing after high school? The truth was I was writing a garlic aioli recipe on a napkin while they studied college forms. Every time I picked up a knife, Dad watched like I might blow something up. Every time I picked up a textbook, I watched the clock. We didn't speak the same language. They wanted suits and framed degrees. I wanted sharp knives and butter that smelled like home. Then Lucas's acceptance letter came. Stanford. The house exploded with joy. Balloons, champagne, a fancy dinner that felt like an insult with a bow. They asked me to work late at the diner so I wouldn't distract. When I came home, there was one stale cupcake in the fridge. No note. Something inside me quietly decided, cut clean. 3 weeks later, I left. No yelling, no drama. I wrote a note, thanks for the expectations. I'll be somewhere with flavor. I tucked it under the magnet that circled business. I stayed on my friend Raina's couch, earned burns and calluses, and got into culinary school with a scholarship I'd won from a chili cook-off plus my savings. Raina's dad asked kindly, "You really want to chop vegetables for a living?" "I want to feed people," I said, "and not feel like a failure doing it." He nodded, the kind of nod you remember. Culinary school wasn't like in movies. It was 5 a.m. knife drills, burns that taught faster than lectures, and teachers who could crush you with silence. Chef Duncan could praise with a grunt and freeze you with quiet. If you cooked it right, the room stayed silent. That silence became the first approval I trusted. I never heard from home. The silence hurt at first, then it felt like freedom. No report cards, no "why not all A's," just whether the sauce broke or didn't, whether the salmon cooked right or died twice. In that truth, I healed. When I cried, it was from tiredness, not shame. When I smiled, it was because something finally tasted perfect. There were other nights too. Nights when Ethan, who worked double hospital shifts, would call and say, "Eat real food, not just staff meal." We weren't a whirlwind. We were a steady warmth. His ex once called my dreams a hobby with burns. I pretended it didn't hurt. I also learned what temperature caramel burns at. Only one of those mattered. When I finally graduated, my hands didn't look like mine anymore. They looked like the life I'd chosen. Work came next. Long hours under a strict Vegas-trained chef who wanted plates that spoke before being tasted. I learned to plate like I was sending messages. Food as art, art as connection. When someone saw a duck confit and asked, "Who made this?" my heart answered before my mouth did. I rented a small apartment with a fridge I could cover in dreams. I pinned my first paycheck with a whisk magnet and wrote on a takeout lid, "Skillet and Ember." The name felt like a secret. Maybe one day it wouldn't be. Lucas's life showed up on my phone. Tagged photos, smiling captions. "Proud of our Lucas. Future this. Future that." I'd sit there, feel the ache inside, then go back to slicing basil so thin it looked like smart little grass. The old console note still stayed in a shoebox under my bed. "Until you take life seriously, no games." Back then, it broke me. Now, I held it like an old memory, a promise I'd someday rewrite. The night I booked my first catering job, 12 people in a backyard under warm hanging lights, I burned the almond tart the first time and got it perfect the second. When I carried it out, someone asked, "Who's the chef?" I said, "I am." Softly. And even if my family couldn't hear it, I finally could. Culinary school didn't give sympathy, only scars and silence. I learned that fast. 5 a.m. knife drills, 12-hour prep labs, and the smell of onions and ambition everywhere. The burns healed slower than the lessons did, but I never missed a single class. Chef Duncan believed there were only two kinds of students, those who quit and those who didn't. I was sure I wouldn't be the first kind. When someone overcooked the salmon, Chef shouted, "This is dry enough to file paperwork." But when I cooked it perfectly, all I got was a grunt. That grunt meant, "I'm proud of you." That grunt became my gold star. I lived for it. Sometimes I'd come home to my small apartment, smelling like garlic and courage, and look at the note taped above my stove, "Be worth your own approval." That's when Ethan really became part of my life. Not as background noise, but as a quiet kind of love that didn't need words. We met when I was catering a small hospital fundraiser. He was the paramedic helping at the first aid booth. He stayed after to help me load trays, saw the blister on my hand, and gave me a bandage without saying anything. He didn't mind my long hours or try to fix the silence between me and my family. He just stayed steady, like a heartbeat. When I doubted myself, he'd tell me, "Donna, some people build walls out of pain. You're building kitchens." I didn't tell him about Maya, his ex, right away. I didn't have to. She was everywhere, mutual friends, tagged pictures, a shadow in his social feed. The kind who loved big gestures and perfect timing. She once told him, "Passion's cute, but it doesn't pay bills." That same week, he bought me a new chef's knife with my initials on it. We both knew what that meant. When culinary school ended, the world didn't cheer. It just got louder. I got a junior job under a Vegas-trained chef who wanted every plate perfect and shouted like food critics were hiding in the ceiling. It was chaos. I thrived in that heat. I found my rhythm: cut, taste, plate, repeat. Food stopped being just food. It became my story. A plate could say I survived louder than words. By 23, I was running the kitchen line, managing events, and saving every rupee I could. The dream that began on a grease-stained napkin became real: Skillet and Ember, my own catering brand. It started small: birthdays, tiny weddings, office lunches, but it grew. Each event felt like a chapter. Each client asking for my name felt like one more word of redemption. Meanwhile, my parents' silence never broke. The only glimpse I got of home came through Lucas's posts: his internship, his medals, his smiling face next to a cake that said, "We couldn't be prouder." No one tagged me. I'd look at the screen like you look at an old scar. It doesn't hurt, but it still itches when it rains. Ethan once asked if I'd ever call them. I said, "They'll call when they have something to celebrate." He looked sad, then said, "When that happens, make sure you're holding the knife, not the napkin." I laughed, but I stored those words like a recipe. Then came the email. Subject line: Graduation Catering Inquiry. The sender's name: Sarah Whitmore. I read it slowly: small family event, buffet service, flexible budget, and froze. Venue: Greenbrook Hall, 15 minutes from my parents' house. Graduate: Lucas Schwartz. The blinking cursor felt like a heartbeat. I didn't breathe, blink, or get angry. I just typed back, "We'd be honored to serve." The day of the event, the place looked like a Pinterest dream: fairy lights, satin tablecloths, soft music floating through the air. It smelled like sugar and pride. "Boss, you okay?" asked Marcus, my sous chef, as he saw me staring out the window. "Yeah," I said, putting on my black chef coat embroidered with the Skillet and Ember logo in gold. "Just family stuff." He raised an eyebrow. "The kind that eats or the kind that burns?" "Both." For hours before guests arrived, we were already plating appetizers: smoked salmon crostini, lemon shrimp skewers, mini beet tarts. Every garnish had purpose. Every flavor meant something. This wasn't just catering. It was quiet truth. When guests began arriving, laughter filled the hall. I heard my father's loud, showy voice greeting relatives. My mother's sharp tone followed, the same one she used with waiters, as if kindness cost extra. Through the kitchen door, I saw Lucas shining in a navy suit and honor stole. Same perfect smile, same easy grace. He looked happy. He looked loved. And as I looked at the food I'd prepared, the linens I'd picked, the centerpieces I'd chosen, I realized every part of that night had my mark on it. My parents didn't know. Not yet. "Marcus," I whispered as the chatter grew, "they're complimenting the food already." "Good," I said. "Let them." Out front, I heard what I'd always wanted to hear: admiration. "This hummus is divine." "The lamb skewers are amazing." "Whoever made this lemon tart deserves a medal." Then I heard my mother's voice. "We hired the best," she said, followed by her familiar laugh, sharp like breaking glass. Marcus looked at me, eyes wide. "That your mom?" "Yep." He smirked. "Oh, this is about to be poetic." I didn't answer. I just fixed my coat, checked the plates, and whispered, "Let's serve the truth." Because sometimes revenge doesn't need fire. Sometimes it just needs a perfectly balanced sauce. By the time the hall was full, Greenbrook shimmered like a royal ball. Fairy lights hung above, a string quartet played softly, and my family glowed in the center, so proud they could bottle it. Through the kitchen door, I saw everything. Dad telling tax jokes. Mom smiling politely. Lucas shining with the peace of someone who'd never been told he wasn't enough. Marcus asked softly, "You sure you want to go out there?" "Eventually," I said, tightening my apron. "But not before dessert. I want them to taste me first." He grinned. "Chef's revenge." "Chef's closure," I corrected. Dinner service was flawless. My team moved like a dance. No dropped plates, no burned food, no panic, just rhythm and accuracy. As trays of roasted lamb, citrus risotto, and caramelized shallots went out to the dining room, I stayed hidden, watching through the door. Every compliment that came back felt like an echo from another life. "This chicken is heavenly. The flavor's perfect." Who runs this catering company? Each word was praise from strangers for the daughter they had erased. Then I heard it, Mom's voice, proud and cheerful. We hired the best. Marcus almost choked on a laugh. You hear that, boss? Oh, I heard it, I said, just not sure whether to laugh or cry. By the time dessert came out, lemon tarts with edible flowers and honey-glazed eclairs, my heartbeat was steady. I fixed my chef coat, tied my ponytail, and looked at my reflection in the steel fridge. I didn't see the girl who once cried over math. I saw a woman who built a world out of butter, sugar, and determination. I'm stepping out, I told Marcus. He raised his brows. You sure? I've been sure for 10 years. The dining room looked smaller up close, maybe because I'd outgrown it. Conversations faded as I walked between tables, holding a tray. My logo shined gold on my black chef jacket, skillet and ember. No one recognized me at first. Then Lucas looked up. His smile froze, fork in midair. Donna, he said softly, like the name had dust on it. Everyone turned. My father's eyes narrowed, Mom's glass trembled, a cherry tomato rolled off her plate. I gave a polite nod. Evening, I said. Hope everything's to your liking. The air went still. My aunt gasped. My cousin blinked like she was watching a drama. You catered this? Lucas asked. I smiled. Technically, my team did. I just built the menu. Mom spoke first, voice tight. You could have told us. I shrugged. You could have invited me. The silence cracked again. Dad didn't move much, but his grip on the glass tightened. You should have said something, he muttered. Like what? I asked. Hi, I'm the family embarrassment who pays taxes now? Someone laughed nervously. Mom glared. I looked at Lucas. He seemed both proud and guilty. Congratulations, I said quietly. You did it. He stood awkwardly. Donna, Mom cut in sharply. We'll talk later. Sure, I said. I'll be in the kitchen. And I walked away, calm, steady. Because walking away wasn't shame anymore. It was closure. In the kitchen, Marcus raised his eyebrows. So, how'd that taste? Bittersweet, I said. Like burnt sugar. Hurts first, then melts. But I knew it wasn't over. An hour later, after coffee and chatter, the microphone clicked. Dad stood, tapping his glass. When Lucas was born, he began, we knew he'd make us proud. The same speech, his achievements, his awards, all rehearsed. Then he paused. But tonight is about family, he said. My chest tightened. Maybe he'd say my name. He didn't. And the wonderful team behind this meal. Laughter. Applause. My mother smiled.
I waited. My name never came. Something in me snapped. Not loud, just final. I walked out calm, carrying a tray of eclairs. People turned and whispered, that's her. I placed the tray beside Dad. Chef Donna Schwartz, I said clearly. Founder of Skillet and Ember. You wanted to know who made the food? That would be me. The room went quiet, then filled with surprised claps and curious looks. My mom turned pale, Dad's jaw tightened. I smiled not at them but for myself. Enjoy your evening, I said softly. Desserts are on the house. Then I walked back through the doors, letting the applause fade. It wasn't revenge. It was taking myself back. For the first time I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen by me. The rest of the night blurred like steam. Soft, quick, unreal. My team packed up quietly. Marcus spoke first. Boss, he said slowly, that was cinematic. I almost laughed. Yeah. What's the review? 5 stars, he smirked. Would cater again. I smiled but my chest still buzzed. With relief, pain, pride. Then Lucas came in, no crowd, no smile, just him. Hey, he said, fiddling with a dessert fork, his old nervous habit. The food's incredible. Glad you liked it, I said, packing lemon tarts. The air filled with all the things we hadn't said. I didn't know you were doing all this, he said. I didn't know you were graduating, I replied. He flinched. Fair. I didn't invite you. Mom said it'd be awkward. I raised an eyebrow. She got that right. He half laughed. I didn't mean to shut you out. You were a kid, I said. You grew up hearing I was the bad example. That's not on you. He looked down. Still feels wrong. It was, I said. But you don't owe me guilt, just honesty. He nodded, eyes glassy. I tell people about you, he said softly. The sister who could turn anything into comfort food. My chest ached. Yeah. When they ask who taught me omelets, he smiled faintly. I say you did. My throat tightened. Well, I said quietly, you're welcome. For a moment we just stood there, two adults with the same old ghosts. Then Mom appeared in the doorway, voice sharp. Donna. I turned. Mom. Can we talk? She asked, glancing at Lucas. He left quietly. Mom crossed her arms. This whole thing, she began. You could have told us. I put down the pastry bag. Told you what? That I built something you'd never approve of. Her lips pressed thin. That you were catering your brother's event. Would you have hired someone else? She hesitated. That's not the point. It's exactly the point, I said. You wanted the image of success, not the truth of it. She flinched. We were hard on you, Donna. We just wanted the best. No, I said softly. You wanted me to be like Lucas. She blinked quickly like she didn't understand. We didn't know you'd turn out like this, she said finally. I nodded once. Yeah, neither did I. For a while she just looked around, at the shining trays, the sugar-dusted eclairs, and the quiet confidence of a daughter she didn't recognize. You're successful, she said at last. I'll admit that. Thank you, I said dryly. You could use this to reconnect, she added quickly. A chance to fix things. I stared at her. You mean forget everything and pretend the last 10 years didn't happen? Her mouth opened then closed. I'm not angry, I said calmer now. I'm just done needing permission to be proud. She said nothing. Her silence was like a truce that didn't feel real. Then from the hallway, Donna, Lucas called, holding 2 glasses of champagne. Dad's making a toast. You should come. I hesitated. Mom's voice cracked. Please. So I went. Not for her, not for him, but for the kid I used to be, the one who still wanted to believe families could change. The lights in the hall were dim and golden. Guests leaned back in their chairs, smiling and laughing. The room felt warm, full, satisfied. Dad stood in the middle, microphone in hand, fixing his tie like he was about to give a speech. When Lucas was born, he began, I remember thinking he's going to make us proud. Here we go again, I thought. And he has. He's shown us hard work and focus. He looked at Mom. His mother and I couldn't be happier. Lucas smiled awkwardly. Even he looked uncomfortable. But tonight, Dad said, isn't just about Lucas's achievements. It's about family, the people who help shape us. I waited, heart still. His mother, his teachers, his friends, and of course the wonderful team who made this incredible meal. A few claps followed. Someone clapped too hard. But he didn't say my name. Not once. That old pain rose again, sharp and deep. Lucas whispered something to him, but Dad shook his head and kept talking, praising everyone without really meaning it. I'd spent 10 years learning not to need his approval, but hearing him ignore me again still hurt, like lemon juice on a cut. I took a breath, walked forward, calm and steady. Guests turned as my footsteps echoed. I reached the dessert table, lifted a tray of eclairs and set it in front of Dad. Compliments of the chef, I said evenly. The room went silent. Chef? Someone asked. Donna Schwartz, I said. Owner of Skillet and Ember. Gasps, whispers. Someone at the back said, you made this? It's amazing. I smiled faintly. Thank you. Dad's face twitched between shock and shame. Lucas stood up and clapped. Slowly, others joined in until the whole room filled with real applause, not polite but honest. The kind that says we see you. I didn't cry or gloat. I just nodded once, turned and walked toward the kitchen doors. Behind me the applause faded. In front of me the stainless steel shone, bright, cold, mine. Later, when the trays were packed and the hall was quiet, Lucas found me again. You were amazing, he said softly. I was hungry, I replied. That's different. He smiled. Dad's shaken. I've never seen him like that. Good, I said. Maybe it's time he tastes humility. Lucas laughed. You're harsh. Efficient, I corrected. We stepped outside. The night air was warm and heavy. Can I visit your kitchen sometime? He asked. You'd love it, I said. Smells like freedom. He laughed then hugged me tight. Real. I'm proud of you, Donna, he whispered. I wish I'd said it sooner. Better now than never. And for the first time since I was 10, that sentence didn't feel sad. It felt peaceful. I was loading the last crate into the van when I heard my name again, softer. Donna. Dad stood by the curb, his tie loose, pride broken. He looked smaller. I owe you an apology, he said. I crossed my arms. I'm listening. For how we treated you. For not seeing it sooner. I waited. He swallowed hard. You did good. It wasn't fancy or emotional, but it was honest. Thanks, I said quietly. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. The event planner gave me this. Inside was the final invoice, stamped paid in full with a handwritten note at the bottom. With interest. Dad almost smiled. That from you? I shrugged. Guess someone thought it was deserved. He nodded slowly, eyes shiny. Take care of yourself, Donna. I already am. He walked away, his shoulders lower than I remembered. I stood there under the dim streetlight, holding the envelope, feeling full and empty at the same time. It wasn't victory. It wasn't revenge. It was the end of a story I'd been rewriting for 15 years. The next morning my phone buzzed. A voicemail. I didn't have to check who it was. Mom's voice filled the room, soft, careful. Donna, I know you're upset. We just like to talk. Maybe dinner, just us. No speeches, no pressure. We just want to see you. Please call me back. I sat at the counter, coffee growing cold, the message replaying. Not because it was surprising, because it wasn't. People always come back when the table's full. A week passed. No calls, no texts, just silence. Then one afternoon, a white envelope slid under the office door. My receptionist thought it was a bill. Inside was a cream card with gold letters. Family, where life begins and love never ends. Inside, in Mom's handwriting, we're sorry. Dinner's still open if you ever feel ready. Love, Mom and Dad. Taped at the bottom was an old photo. Me and Lucas, ages 10 and 12, making gingerbread cookies, frosting on our faces, me laughing, him missing teeth. No note, no explanation. I stared at it for a long time. Not angry. Not touched. Just tired. It wasn't that I hadn't wanted this before. I had. I dreamed of what I'd say if Dad ever said sorry or if Mom ever hugged me without judging. But now I didn't need those moments anymore. I'd already made my own kind of love, out of heat, sugar, and hard work. I didn't need their approval. I'd learned to give it to myself. So I placed the photo on my fridge beside my first paycheck and a sticky note that said, "Be worth your own approval." Then I went back to work. That Friday we catered a small business launch, 40 guests, simple setup. The host was a familiar face, Ms. Reynolds, my old math teacher. When she saw me carrying a tray of canapes, her eyes widened. "Donna Schwartz, you're the owner?" I nodded and smiled. "Skillet and Ember. It's been a while." She laughed. "I remember your parents. They were strict about your grades." "That's one way to say it," I replied with a light tone. She chuckled and said, "You know, I gave you that C in math." I blinked. "Really?" She nodded. "You didn't fail. You just learned in a different way. I remember you stayed after class to ask why the formula worked, not just how. I thought, this girl thinks like a builder, not a calculator." The compliment hit deeper than I expected. "I hope someone noticed the effort," she said softly. I looked down at my tray. "Not back then." She tilted her head. "Maybe now is a better time." That night, after everyone left, I came home to silence. The kind that once hurt but now felt earned. I pulled out an old note from the shoebox under my bed. "Until you take life seriously, no games." Back then it felt like a punishment. Now it looked like something to work with. I picked up a small craft knife, the same one I used to cut cake boxes, and carefully split the paper in half. One side read, "Until you take life seriously." The other said, "No games." I kept the first half and taped it on my fridge beside the gingerbread photo. The other half I sealed in an envelope and mailed to my parents' address. No name, no message, just the words "no games." 2 days later, Lucas texted me a photo of Dad holding the note, his brow furrowed, lips pressed. He doesn't get it yet, but he's thinking about it. I smiled. That was enough. A few weeks later, a local magazine interviewed me for a story called Resilience in Small Business. The reporter asked, "What kept you going during the hardest times?" I paused, thinking about long nights, burns on my wrists, the silence after every family dinner I missed, the smell of yeast and ambition that never left my hands. Then I smiled. "AC in math," I said, "and a locked door." She laughed, thinking I was joking. I didn't correct her. Later that night I walked into my kitchen, small, warm, and filled with quiet pride. On the counter sat a fresh batch of lemon tarts cooling under soft light. I plated one, sprinkled powdered sugar, and took a bite. Sweet, sharp, honest. For the first time I wasn't eating to fill an emptiness. I was tasting proof. The doorbell rang. Ethan stood there with takeout and flowers. He grinned. "You working or celebrating?" "Both," I said, smiling. "Come in. There's dessert." He leaned against the counter, eyes gentle. "You look peaceful." "I am," I said. Finally. Outside the city buzzed. Inside everything was quiet. And in that quiet I understood something simple and deep. I had spent years chasing permission to feel worthy. Now I gave it to myself. Fade out. Skillet and ember shone on the window in soft gold. And behind it, the woman once called a failure learned that some stories aren't about winning. They're about rewriting what it means to be.